Good evening, everybody. I'm Councillor Rob Field, Chairman of Audit Standards Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this meeting committee this evening. Before we commence proceedings, may I take this opportunity to advise you that if the fire alarm sounds, please can you remain seated, and members of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building should that be necessary. Tonight's proceedings will be webcast by the Council, but if anyone else is intending to record proceedings, can you let me know now? Applications. I ask just to ensure that should you wish to, the people in the room are aware, not to deny you your right to do so. I'd also like to advise members that they should only address the meeting by way of their microphones, and remind you all please to turn them off when you finish speaking. So moving on to item 1, are there any apologies for absence?
Received apologies from Councillor Barwick.
And are there any substitute members? No substitute members. Item 3 is urgent items. So I have agreed to take the statement of accounts for 2024-25, including the external auditor's audit report findings and the letter of representation as an urgent item so that they can be reviewed and signed off in good time. I have also agreed to take the update to the letter of representation, as an urgent item for completeness. That is on the desk in front of you. It's an update to Appendix 4. The recommendations, you'll note, remain unchanged. I am proposing a slight change to the order of business. So I intend to take item 16, the Auditor's Annual Report for 24-25, and item 18, the Statement of Accounts, after the committee work programme, which, if you stay with me, is item 11. That's just to afford the opportunity for our guests from Grant Thornton to leave once they've presented on their items, rather than stay for the rest of the committee's business. I take it there's no dissent from that idea. Okay, thank you. So moving on, item number 4, are there any visiting members? I can't see any. Item number 5, any disclosures by members or officers? Okay, thank you. Item number 6, are there any disclosures of lobbying? Item 7, I move that the items on the agenda be taken in public as proposed. Is that agreed? Item 8, minutes of the 28th of July. I move that the minutes of the meeting held on 28th July be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Councillor Cooling, you wanted to come in. Just as a reminder, we can only discuss the accuracy. We don't have matters arising for the minutes.
Matters arising, please. Yeah.
Don't have matters arising. We only take matters of accuracy. Did you have any matters of accuracy?
No. May I ask when I will be able to raise matters arising?
So it would have to have been submitted as an urgent item to Democratic Services. Briefly, if we could just explore what's on your mind.
If I may, after the last meeting, Mark Green very, very kindly, very helpfully issued an email, I think it went to everyone, which noted the various questions at the last meeting. And I would no doubt that was onerous, but I was wondering whether that could be a repeated process, because no disrespect to Debbie, who does minutes excellently, those answers to questions give considerable depth to the minutes and demonstrate more clearly the diligence with which this committee addresses the agenda. So it is a question, and I didn't know where to raise it at all, whether that will be a repeated process. Thank you.
So I think it's common across many of the council's committees that occasionally, for complex questions that arise in the meeting, officers are asked to provide a written response, and Mr. Green is happy to do so as and when the requirement arises, but they are specific queries of further detail for members of the committee, and they would not be included, generally speaking, in the minutes. So I wouldn't expect it to happen as a matter of course, and the minutes would be the record as per in front of members now. So are we happy, members, to accept the minutes as an accurate record of the meeting? Thank you. So item 9, questions and answer session for local residents. I've not been informed of any questions. Item 10 takes us to questions from members of the council to the chairman. I've received no questions. And that moves us nicely on to item 11, which is the committee work programme, which you'll find on page 14 of the agenda. So the work programme is set out, as I say, on page 14. It outlines our standing work programme. Were there any questions or comments related to upcoming items of business? Councillor Kecker.
Thank you, Chairman. I know there's on the agenda there's about the complaints and whistleblowing, but providing the complaints and then the whistleblowing has not been on the agenda or the work program. It will be good to consider in the coming days or coming months to include that as well. Thank you.
So we do have complaints on the agenda tonight, and it's currently received formally on a 6-monthly basis. Not to preempt the discussion on tonight, but we don't actually get that many. Are you concerned that the frequency is insufficient?
Providing the whistleblowing policy, I'll come back on that in a minute, but the providing whistleblowing policy had not been, reviewed for some time. It would be good to, I know there is a 6-month program, but what I'd like to remind, probably after next work program when published, make sure those 2 agenda have been included on the work program. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Councillor Kecker, I'm had a very busy day, not quite following. So the whistleblowing policy has been updated. We receive a formal report of complaints every 6 months, but you're querying whether there needs to be a review of the complaints in light of the new policy. Is that what you're asking? I'm sorry if I'm not.
No, sorry. I mean, probably I'm thinking ahead is what I'd like to say is this is 6-month program. Am I right? So probably the next program when it comes in, probably that's we can talk about it. Is probably I'm bringing a bit more ahead. Is those complaints on whistleblowing policy probably needs to be included in the coming next work program? Does it make sense, or still not?
So I've taken advice from officers, and the annual report on complaints was received at the last meeting, and that's covered along with freedom of information, request update, and so on and so forth. The code of conduct matters come every 6 months. The whistleblowing policy has come because it has been updated. I think that covers all of the bases. Are you happy with that?
What I'm going to say is that probably those things, the complaints which we discussed last meeting, and then the whistleblowing is separate things. They have not been in a working program, I remember. So what I was trying to highlight is those matter. Can we have a consideration for the future when the program is published? Make sure that we do review them at least every 6 months. That's what I was trying to say. Thank you.
I'm happy to open this up to wider debate. Does the committee feel that we need more than the current annual report on the complaints that the council has formally received? It is in line with plan practice that's established for quite some time. Councillor Stravinsky.
I'm happy with it annually, unless if it causes too much work and it's too onerous annually, but maybe 6 months might be an idea. If it doesn't create too much extra work, that's all.
From my perspective, I am mindful that we do have quite a busy programme already, and these are not necessarily the easiest documents for everybody to absorb and comment on. My personal view is I haven't seen anything in the reports that we have received around complaints that make me feel like there's something more to be gained from increased submissions. So I'm minded to stay as is unless there is very strong feeling to the contrary. Okay. Was there anything else on the work programme? Mr. Dobbs.
Yeah, I think it's rooted elsewhere, and I don't want to create work for officers, but I think once a year it would be good if, and forgive me if it's already on here, if we could have sight of the corporate risk register at this committee. I think it goes elsewhere. It's a really good corporate risk register. I think it's important we have sight of it once a year, but no more frequently than that. That would be helpful.
Yes, I think I agree with you. I think I did have a discussion with the team as well in the chair's briefing about the raw and mitigated risk being presented. So yeah, I think we can see that more often, no problem. Anything further on the work programme? Thank you. So we will now move to item 16, which you will find on pages 77 to 111 of your papers. And Mr. Lovegrove, is it you presenting?
If you don't mind, I was going to pass to Paul because Paul's done all the hard work. And
well, I'm quite
the brains
happy for Mr. Holland to make the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report shown at Appendix 1 is produced by Grant Thornton, who are the Council's external auditors. Its purpose is to report on the Council's arrangements for securing economy, efficiency and effectiveness in the use of its resources. In summary, the report only identifies one improvement recommendation made in relation to the establishment of a long-term savings programme. As you'll see, Sophia Taylor and Sonia Malik from Grant Thornton are here this evening, and I'll ask them now to talk in some more detail about their report, and then we'll be happy to take any questions you might have after that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, are there any questions on this item? Councillor Titchener.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I don't know what on the heading I can raise this. I just wanted to ask a question about written off debts. Is that some other item in the agenda?
Could you just say that again? A question?
Debts that have been written off. I see on the email in September that about 5.6 million has been written off, including nearly 600,000 council tax. I wanted to know if you're setting the bailiffs and doing anything about this rather large writing off over three or 5 years, I think it is. 3 years, totaling 5.6 million, the whole thing.
Thank you, Councillor Titchener. I'm not sure if it's directly relevant to this report.
Okay.
The question that the note that I sent out related to was raised by Councillor Trubinsky at the last meeting, and the context was the annual statement of accounts, and quite rightly he asked about levels of debt, and I responded to that. But I did say that in the level of old debts and bad debts should be seen in the context of the overall amount of business that the council does. I mean, it collects nearly 200 million of council tax and business rates every year. So it might seem like a big figure, but actually in the overall scheme of things, it's not. And I can also reassure you that we do have robust processes in place for chasing up old debts, and we take people to court as necessary. So I can provide more information, but I mean, I hope that the answer I gave to Councillor Trubinsky provides members with satisfaction that we are dealing with debts effectively.
Thank you very much. I wasn't actually at the last meeting, so I just saw the figures. Thank you.
Yep, sorry, go ahead.
So just wanted one small point. In terms of the write-offs, Mark has a delegation to do things up to 12,000. Above that, they will come to the PACs and then to Cabinet. So there's visibility around that. So that we are certainly not hiding anything from you in terms of that. So, and it gives the details of what we try to do in terms of recovery process and stuff like that. So there is some transparency around that in terms of the financial information.
Yes, I'd echo that councillors are quite diligent in making sure that we have a robust explanation for anything that's being written off. Were there any other questions for this item? Councillor Cadger?
Thank you, Chairman. Let me point out on some of the typo on the page number 96 on your pack. I think that should read on the left-hand side, where it said they identified all the significant financial, I believe. And did you get that? Yeah, and then the 97 on your right, the first paragraph, I believe that's 2030-31, I believe. Then that text, did you spotted that? Yeah. 30-31 should be. Then my question is around the page number 85 on the pack, where you said the approximately 184,500 residents. What's the source of that stat? Because further down I spotted that seemed to be a slightly older data, because it contradicts with something. Some that residents, number of residents, 184,500. I think that's what's the source of data, because that does contradicts with the further, I can't remember which agenda. There's a further in a different agenda that the stat is does not correlate with the other agenda. So, okay.
Are there any Councillor Cooch?
Thank you. Page 97. I guess this may be ruled out of order.
Sorry, Councillor Cooling, Councillor Cooch.
My apologies.
Thank you, Chair. It's just one small comment, because obviously overall the report has moved most areas from amber to green. Page, we'll be on 103, page 21 of the report, there's a recommendation that was made in 23-24. It notes that it's not being carried out in 24-25. I was just wondering what the reason for that was, whether it's capacity or whether there's anything else the council can be doing to ensure those recommendations can be followed. Thank you.
Are you happy with the response? Okay, I think we might have a slight mismatch between the page numbering on the online version and the hard copies, which is why some people might be looking a little puzzled. We'll work with it as best we can. Councillor Cooling, you had a point you wish to raise?
Thank you very much. On page 97, I say this may be ruled out of order, I don't know. In the middle block, second paragraph, underspend has been rolled, this is the capital underspend has been rolled forward into the council's capital programme. Maybe a question for Mark. Is that a wise thing to do, rather than just shove the whole profile of capital expenditure forward? Is it just going to mean that in the year ahead, which we're in now, there's just going to be a massive underspend? So are you comfortable with just rolling forward and adding on, rather than shunting the whole profile forward? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Cooling. The expenditure that is being rolled forward is expenditure that was budgeted for 24-25, so it's real planned capital expenditure. So it makes sense to carry it forward. It's not, it doesn't affect the 25-26 program, because when we were drawing up the 25-26 program, we likewise identified specific things that we were going to spend money on. If we didn't roll that budget forward, we would leave ourselves short of budget to deliver the capital program.
If I may, though, is that not indicative of where management should take an overview, or should I say underview, on the digestibility of the capital program and the deliverability by contractors and officers? So is it not just a symptom of undue pressure, undue expectation? And in fact, at the end of 25-26, we're going to have again a massive underspend, or am I just a bit cynical?
Not at all, Councillor Cooling. I think you're right to raise the concerns, and the capital programme has underspent, and it's reflective partly of the challenges, particularly of the housing programme. Initially with the Maidstone East development, for example, it took longer to get planning permission than we had anticipated. For 25-26, with the Maidstone East development, we have to get approval for our plans from the building control regulator, which risks delay. So there are certain risks with delivering the capital programme, and you're right to highlight them. I would challenge the idea that this was just kind of a failing of the council, because we're pushing hard to deliver the programme, but I mean, there are big challenges in doing so.
Mr. Dodd?
Thank you, Chair. On page 109, the external auditor identified the issue around whistleblowing policy, and I know it's on the agenda later in terms of an updated policy. They do say, however, that it was last revised in 2016. I mean, this is an area of law that's evolving quite rapidly, and things like the Employment's Right Bill, for example, if that becomes enacted, will immediately change what a whistleblowing policy should look like by including things like sexual harassment as a protected disclosure. I think given that, I'm sure it's something officers have got in hand, I would suggest that the whistleblowing policy probably needs a review annually to ensure that it still complies with best practice and legal requirements. That would be a good way of ensuring that it remains up to date, but also that the council discharges its responsibilities into, as far as any individuals are concerned, that fall into that channel of making a whistleblown disclosure, no matter how few there are. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, at the moment, and certainly with the report presented to you tonight and the policy, there is a commitment to update the whistleblowing policy. At the moment, I think it's once every 2 years. I agree with you. There is a lot of legislative change going on in this area, in particular at the moment. So certainly we can look at that and respond to that request.
Thank you. Is there any further comment? Councillor Cooling. Yes.
My hearing must be bad. Page 96. This is my ignorance showing. The first part, the upper part of that table mentions reserves. And I think I'm correct in recollecting that the amount of cash and short-term investments is less than the total of general reserves. My ignorance showing, if NBC wanted to blow all of the reserves immediately on some investment or other, where does the cash come from? Where are those general reserves, usable reserves, sitting? Thank you.
It's a hypothetical question, Councillor Cooling, because we wouldn't blow the reserves in the way that you say. The way that that type of expenditure would ultimately have to be funded would be through borrowing, but I mean, that wouldn't be particularly prudent. And as I say, it wouldn't happen because we do seek to maintain an adequate level of reserves.
So the reserves, forgive me, some of it has been invested maybe in property, etc. So it's illiquid. So fine, I understand that now, and thank you very much.
Were there any other questions or comments on this particular item? Just from the chair, from me, Mr. Green, I wonder, we do have this recommendation around the medium-term financial strategy and long-term resilience. I wondered if you had any initial comments on where you feel we are in relation to the context of that recommendation.
Absolutely, we do take on board what the auditors have said, and in our financial planning, we plan over the medium term, which we treat as being 5 years. So in the medium term financial strategy that we'll be going to council next February, we will look at the situation not just for next year, 26-27, but over the 5 years, and we'll, so far as possible, identify ways that we can minimise the budget gap over that time period. And it's worth adding there, and I'll talk about this again when talking about budget risks, that although 5 years will probably take us beyond the point where Maidstone Council ceases to exist as a separate entity, that doesn't mean that we don't worry about what happens after 2028. We will continue to plan on the basis that whoever takes over our assets and liabilities is going to have those same challenges about balancing the budget.
Thank you. Right, was there anything else on this item before we move on? Right then, so that will take us on to item, oh, sorry. Yes, that is an item for noting the members agreed we note the report. So that will take us on to item 18, which is the urgent item supplementary. I call upon Adrian Lovegrove, Head of Finance, to introduce the report before handing over to the representatives of Grant Thornton.
Adrian's asked me to report on this one again, Chair. So, members may recall that a report on the draft statement of accounts was presented to the July meeting of this committee. Since that meeting, the external audit of those accounts has now been undertaken and is now substantially complete. And I'm pleased to report that the auditors intend to issue an unqualified audit opinion. The updated statement, including the narrative report, is attached to Appendix 1 and 2, along with the audit findings report at Appendix 3 and the letter of representation at Appendix 4. The headlines on pages 6 to 8 of the audit findings report conclude that our auditors are satisfied with the statement of accounts, our value for money arrangements, our statutory duties, and the implementation of IFRS 16, which was a significant new accounting standard that came into effect for the 24-25 financial year. It also confirms no significant difficulties or matters arose during the audit. The action plan on pages 32 and 33 does make a couple of recommendations which the finance team will review and deal with going forward. Pages 35 to 40 set out the changes that were made to the draft statement as a result of the audit, and pages 41 to 45 are those issues that were identified but were not adjusted for, as they were not considered to be significant enough to warrant an adjustment. I'll ask my colleagues from Grant Thornton to say a few words on their report now, and then we'll be happy to take any questions after that.
Good evening, members. I will take the audit findings report as read by everyone. We've had a positive engagement with the council's finance team throughout the audit. The process has gone smoothly, and I'd like to thank the team for the support. We are on track to issue an unmodified audit opinion, which is scheduled for release on Tuesday. I'm pleased to confirm that the audit has been completed in line with the statutory deadline. During our review, we identified 9 adjustments to the financial statements. As per page 6 of the report, these adjustments resulted in a net decrease of 317,000 to the council's comprehensive income and expenditure statement. These adjustments are detailed in Appendix D of the report on page 35. We've received the IAS 19 assurance letter, completed our review of subsequent events, and are now awaiting the management representation letter, which we expect to receive following the meeting. Our value for money work has been completed. The findings in the auditor's annual report have already been presented to you by Sophia. Under our statutory duties, I can confirm that we have not exercised any statutory powers. A new area this year was the implementation of IFRS 16 leases. We have completed our work in this area. While it is not material to the financial statements, we did note some omissions which are reflected in our findings in Appendix D. I'd like to draw your attention to page 12 of the report, where we revisit the significant risks identified into our audit plan issued in July. The significant risks raised in the plan are management override of controls, valuation of land and buildings, including investment properties, valuation of pension fund net liability, presumed risk of fraud in revenue recognition, and presumed risk of fraud in expenditure recognition. The detailed findings relating to these risks are presented from pages 35 to 42. One of the key risks we identified was around expenditure recognition. We found a material adjustment and have made a control recommendation regarding the completeness of expenditure. This is discussed on page 33 and page 38, respectively. We've also raised a recommendation on the related party disclosures, which is included in Appendix B on page 32. Appendix C on page 34 revisits prior year recommendations. 2 recommendations remain open, and we continue to work with management to address these. Appendix D on page 35 provides a comprehensive summary of the audit adjustments, including adjusted and unadjusted item, as well as misclassifications and disclosure amendments. We're happy to take any specific questions you may have on the findings, recommendations, or any other aspect of the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and add congratulations on behalf of the committee for hitting the statutory deadline. Are there any questions from members? Mr. Dobbs?
Yeah, just a couple of comments. I mean, firstly, well done to everybody involved. Good results. So congratulations to Mark and his team, and obviously thanks to the auditors. I note on page 280 on your audit opinion, you say that you mentioned that you're able to complete the audit, but we're unable to conclude owing to a delay because of your progress on the WGA accounts. When will that be complete, and when will the council receive its audit certificate? Thank you.
Councillor Coolin.
Page 133, paragraph 2.3. That looks extremely reasonable. But I think we'd be remiss as a committee if we didn't actually say, if in your judgment the changes are significant, whatever that means, that they should at least be emailed to this committee for agreement. So paragraph 2.3 on page 133. Big number in 133. That's my first point.
Would you like to make your additional point now?
Yes, please. All I'm saying is that 2.3, the request there that yourself and Mark should approve any changes sounds very reasonable. But presumably this committee, as I said, would be remiss if it weren't notified of any, you pick what significant means, any significant changes presumably should be notified to us by email for our approval. But significant is an elastic word, which I assume that you will set a suitable level.
I'll ask Mr. Green to respond.
Thank you, Councillor Cooling. The wording here is really to give us flexibility if by any chance something were to happen between now and tomorrow morning when the accounts are due to be signed. I think it's extremely unlikely that there will be any changes required. And of course, if there were any, then we would let you know.
I think you said you had another point.
Several other points. And thank you for that, Mark. I mean, that was obvious. If you don't mind me saying that, but it's good to hear. On page, by the way, if I had a pound for every colour ink cartridge that was used, I'd be a rich man probably. I think it's page 136, so it's pretty indistinguishable. And it's just an observation. This is key facts about Maidstone. And on the right-hand side, council revenue generated locally. It's only about, am I misreading this? It's only just over 5%, which is not generated locally, i.e., whatever the government says, if you see what I mean, they're affecting just over 5%. Do I misunderstand that? Thank you.
No, I think you've interpreted it correctly. Maidstone Borough Council is pretty much self-sufficient in that most of our revenue comes from the council tax and business rates that's raised locally. There is an element that we get from government grant, but compared with, say, 10 years ago, it's very small.
If I may continue, that's fine. I think that puts into context the risk matrix, some of the elements of the risk matrix later on. Page 156 and 157, balance sheet and cash flow statement. 156, 157. Bottom of page 157 gives the statement of cash and cash equivalents at the end of the reporting period. And we don't need to go into it unless I've misunderstood. They do not tie in with the figures on page 156 for cash and cash equivalents. I don't know what I'm missing, and it may be just my lack of understanding. But if those figures can be checked, please. For instance, page 156, at the end of the 24-25, cash and cash equivalents stated to be 3985, and on the page 157, 13644. I may have totally misread something, but I'm surprised that they don't tie up the detail.
So on the balance sheet, if you look just below current assets, you've got bank overdraft, and that's netted off against the cash and cash equivalents to come back to the 13,644 that's on the cash flow statement.
Right. As long as it's my misunderstanding, I haven't got a problem. If I may then move on. page 179. Page 179, the exit packages. Again, it's only an observation which these accounts have brought to light. But the number of compulsory redundancies in the latest full financial year, 10 compared to 2 the previous year, is notable, as is the settlements for those 2, which average 115k each. I'm sure there was a good reason for management to make those compulsory redundancies, but when you're getting to over 100k for a severance package, then in a sense it's a mini project, whether you keep that person for a few more years to get something out of him or her, or whether you pay it up front. So it's just an observation, but those stand out like a very sore thumb. Just an observation. You probably want me to shut up soon. I'll ignore that one. I notice there are, I think, 8 audit adjustment pages. Can I just check, please? Are those adjustments actually made to 24-25, or are they just noted for correction within the following financial year? Are they actually made in the accounts that are being submitted now? Again, forgive my ignorance, but when it comes to 20, and by the way, I think we all echo the comments made earlier, and it's been a great team effort by yourselves and by internal finance to get this done in time. Absolutely brilliant. But can I just check for 25-26, those adjustments will not be forgotten somehow? No, fine, that's fine. Okay, thank you. And then my final tongue-in-cheek comment, if I've got a cheek to put my tongue in, is on page 285. Well, I'm just wondering why Adrian is signing this rather than Mark. It's only meant as a bit of fun. Why are you signing?
I happen to be on holiday at that point, but I'll be fine signing the final accounts.
Thank you, Councillor Cooley. Were there any other questions, comments? Councillor Kadka.
Thank you, Chair. Just a very minor observation, probably can help me on that. Page number 138, on the second paragraph from the left. When you said the miscollection have been fallen by nearly 90% since the start of the contract. So if the 10,000 reported in April 2024, then 90% reduction, or that meant to be 10% reduction. So I'm just struggling to understand how come it had a 90% reduction.
So, Councillor Kadka, I think members will recall when we changed over the waste contract, there were quite some difficulties with collections, and I think it's fair to say there was a quite significant statistical anomaly in terms of how many waste-related complaints and missed bin collections there were. I believe, and officers can correct me if I'm wrong, that this simply describes the recovery to a more normal position after the bedding in period for the waste contract. But I'm happy to invite any other observations from the team if there are any. Does that satisfy your query? Okay, brilliant, thank you. Were there any other questions or comments? Councillor Cooling.
You've given me an opening to raise my matters arising. in the minutes, it was stated that there'll be a check for the waste collection contract, in case you're minded to swap it again. There'll be a check. We've got all the intellectual property rights that we require. So can I leave that as a question? And if the answer could be in the minutes, I'd be quite happy. But have we got all the IPR if we wish to move on from sewers? Thank you.
I'm assured that we do. Okay, so if there's no further comments, we are invited to approve any further changes that may be needed, and that we note the external audit findings report and the letter of representation. Is that agreed, members? Oh, apologies. I'm really not having a good day in the chair here. We are in fact approving the accounts at point 1. So can I confirm that we are happy to approve the accounts? Thank you, Councillor. Right, so I believe that that concludes the items for which our guests from Grant Thornton are invited to comment. You're welcome to stay if you wish, but I imagine you probably have better things to do. So, members, that takes us back to item 12 on the substantive agenda. This is the complaints received under the members' code of conduct, which you'll find on page 15 of your papers. Call upon Gary Rowland, Deputy Monitoring Officer, to introduce the report.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, members. So my report this evening is a report of 2 parts. The first part is the standard 6-monthly Code of Conduct complaints update. These are set out at Appendix 1 of the report, and they cover the period of the 1st of March 2025 to 31st of August 2025. You will see from the appendix that there were 2 complaints received during this period. Both were against parish or town councillors, and both were found to have not established a breach of the code. The second part of the report tonight is in response to a question raised by Councillor Cooling at the March 2025 meeting of the committee. This is in relation to whether names of subject members could be disclosed as part of the 6-monthly complaint update report. I don't propose to read the report in full, but as you will see from the report, I, along with the monitoring officer, have reflected on the query, having considered UK GDPR, Data Protection Act, and also ICO guidance. We are of the opinion that it would not be proportionate and necessary to disclose the name of the subject member in cases where there has not been a finding of a breach of the code. Under the UK GDPR and the Data Protection Act, the principles of proportionality and necessity are key to ensuring that personal data is processed lawfully, fairly and transparently. That said, for those complaints where there is a finding of a breach of the code that is subject to either informal or formal resolution, we are of the opinion that disclosure of subject member details may be justified unless there is a compelling reason not to do so. Now, the next complaint update report will be presented to this committee in March 2026. There is still some consideration needed as to how disclosure would happen in practice, such as whether disclosure would be presented on yellow papers or whether a tiered approach would be adopted in terms of the severity of the breach in question. So therefore, we propose to bring a further report to this committee, setting out various options and seeking committee's approval so that a procedure can be put into place for the next complaint update report in March 2026. So I think that's all from me. I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Cooling.
Page 19, right at the bottom, 2.14 that you've just more or less read out. Could we consider knowing what the compelling reason is. Okay, apart from that, leads well. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, do you want me to come back? Or?
I'm happy for you to go ahead if you wish.
Thank you, Councillor Cooling. I'll certainly make a note of that, and we can include that in our next report for discussion and approval. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you raised a good point. I think if we include that on our debate when we get the report, as mentioned, I think that would be productive. Were there any other questions or comments on this item? Okay, so this report recommends that the committee note the update on complaints received under the Code of Conduct, and that the committee note the proposal for publishing subject member names in relation to certain complaints. Are we happy to note the report? Lovely, thank you. This takes us to item 13, which is the annual information governance report, which you'll find on page 22. So we have Lauren McNichol and Anna Collier joining us remotely. I call upon Lauren to introduce the report with Anna.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, members. So this is the annual information governance report for 2024-25. It provides performance data on the management of information governance. So this includes complaints, FOI and EIR, data protection and MP correspondence. Overall, 2024-25 was a fairly difficult year for a couple of reasons. The main one being the introduction of the new waste contracts at the end of March 2024. It resulted in a large increase in the numbers of waste complaints we received, particularly in quarters 1 and 2. And then the other difficulty within the year was there were some changes within the information governance team. So we had a couple of vacant positions that we had to fill throughout the year. So these challenges meant that performance unfortunately dropped in the first 2 quarters of the year. During this time, we prioritised complaints so that we could keep on top of the large volumes we were receiving. We did have some help from some trusted colleagues in the wider policy transformation and insight team. We trained them to investigate and respond to waste complaints at stage 2, which built resilience and enabled more responses to be sent on time. We have kept going with this approach in the current year as we are continuing to receive relatively high volumes of stage 2 complaints. In quarters 3 and 4, we were able to make improvements in terms of our performance. This was because the waste service stabilised at this point and the information governance team became fully staffed. Throughout the year, we increased communication levels within the team and with colleagues across the organisation, and this helped us to improve our performance overall. So generally, we had relatively good performance across the year for 2024-25. Just a couple of key things I wanted to note in terms of our performance. In terms of FOI and EIR requests, unfortunately, there was an overall decrease in responses sent on time compared to the previous year. However, our performance did improve throughout the year. By quarter 4, we managed to send 88% of responses on time. And in quarter 1 of this current year, we managed to send 92% of responses on time. So it's going in a positive direction. In terms of complaints, there was actually a slight increase in responses sent on time compared to the previous year, which is very positive considering the large volumes of complaints we were dealing with. Also positive to note is that there was a 44% decrease in data protection incidents in 2024-25 compared to the previous year, which indicates that staff are handling personal data more carefully and securely. Alongside the report, there is an analysis of complaints that were escalated to the local government ombudsman in 2024-25. The number of complaints upheld by the ombudsman was consistent with previous years, which is positive considering the large increase in the volume of complaints we received in this year. The report also includes a brief summary of the new Data Use and Access Acts. However, we don't anticipate that this will have any major impacts on the council. I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you very much. Councillor Drinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The percentage being dealt with that's shown is fine. What happens to the ones that aren't dealt with on time? And is there an aged analysis of whatever's left that isn't dealt with? Thank you.
Did you catch
So
the
we,
question?
yes, I did. Yes, thank you.
Oh, lovely.
We don't have a backlog of complaints or requests of any type, so they are all dealt with. Those that are dealt with late, obviously it's unfortunate. We do try to send responses and deal with requests on time as much as we can. Sometimes it's unavoidable that responses are sent late. We do keep customers and requesters updated as much as we can to manage their expectations. And of course, we always apologise for delays where they're unavoidable.
So what we're saying is that if you've got a, say, a 92% response rate, the other 8% are dealt with in the next quarter? Definitely?
Yes, they are dealt with. We don't have a record of how long the delays are, but yes, they are dealt with very, very shortly afterwards.
I would have thought we need to have some kind of record of, you know, things that are outstanding, how they get dealt with after each quarter. That's my personal feeling anyway. Okay.
We can include that as additional, apologies for the voice, we can include that as additional analysis because we do keep a record of every complaint. So if you want to see that in the next report, we can do that easily.
Thank you, that would be appreciated. Councillor Cooling.
Page 37. It's an observation. Paragraph 7.2. In 2024-25, 404 letters or emails from the MPs. There are 2 of them, I guess. That's 2 per working day. Have we got any feel for whether those letters ended up changing anything that officers had determined to do before the letter arrived? Are the letters effective, or are they, how does one put it, just taking up officer time? Thank you.
If I may.
Go ahead, sorry, Chair.
I would say really what we're looking at here, I understand your point, but what we're looking at is the performance of the team in providing the response. Clearly, as locally elected representatives, the MPs will make inquiries across a range of casework that they may pick up. But what is important in terms of this committee is the success rate for responding within the time. I wouldn't expect officers to have an opinion on the substance of the MP's inquiries particularly. Anna, was there anything you wanted to add?
No, I mean, we don't have any information on that at all. We provide updates, additional information for their casework, but we would rarely, never receive feedback.
Does that satisfy you?
Yes, it does, but it must end up taking up half a person year at least, if not 1 person year. And when we're trying to find cost savings, if there's any view amongst members on whether these letters have true value in terms of residents, fine. If not, there's a potential saving of several tens.
I take the point. I think it would be extraordinary for the council to find an MP being vexatious under the relevant legislation, but yes, I'm sure it's something that could be considered. Councillor Greenham.
Thank you, Chair. I just really wanted to say hats off to the team. When you look at the number of waste complaints in Q4, it was down to 50, which I assume is quite a standard level. To see they had to deal with 860 in Q1. I can't imagine the pressure the team were under answering that number of complaints. So well done to them. But I just wanted to ask, obviously, going forward, if we were ever in this situation again, with be it with the waste contract or any other contract, do we have a plan in place for upskilling staff to be able to cover other teams and support them in certain ways, so that they weren't under so much pressure in future?
So when yeah, we obviously the issues with the waste contracts gave us very good experience of being in that sort of situation. At that time, we did train wider members of Anna's service to support us. So we did upskill them to support us with some of our administrative work, as well as some of our other areas of work in terms of investigating stage 2 complaints. From my perspective as well, I also helped out on the other side of things with customer services. So we've got that relationship where we do have good connections across the council, and we are very happy to work with them and rely on them, and also support them when they need it, in terms of whenever we have any issues like that. So yes, I think we've definitely got those relationships there, and it's definitely something that we could rely on if we needed to in the future.
Councillor Burke.
Thank you. Just two quick things. One, I say exactly the same. Well done for the amount of complaints that you've got. And in my role outside this, I do a very similar thing around complaints. So on page 35, 5.4, it talks about requests are becoming more complicated. So what I've noticed personally from my role outside is with the introduction of AI, you're getting a lot more complaints coming in, because you put 3 or 4 bullet points into the computer, and it can write you 1,000, 1,500 word complaint, which is very technical and difficult to go through. So we have noticed a massive increase, say from someone who's not best at doing complaints, doesn't know what to do. You're on AI, within 25 seconds, you've got a fantastic letter that stumps the best of us to how to break down an answer. So I think as a department, going forward, I think you really need to prepare yourself for this going up and up and up, and I cannot see it getting any better. So I think there might be a conversation that you have outside of here to really look at how you're going to future-proof yourself, because it's just going to become more challenging for you guys, really.
Thank you. I think that's a reasonable observation given the increased use of such tools. Are there any other questions or comments for this item? Okay, so we are asked to note the annual performance in information governance as shown at Appendix 1, and to note the local government ombudsman's letter as shown at Appendix 3, and the recent legislative changes outlined at section 2.8. Are we happy to note the report? Thank you. That brings us on to item 14, which is the Audit, Governance and Standards Committee Annual Report, which you'll find on page 43. And it actually falls to me to present this, since it's our report. I think you will probably be unsurprised by the content. I would say if we look at the self-assessment, we have the usual issue that is highlighted as a major improvement, which is that as a relatively small council, we are the standards committee as well as audit, and that is contrary to recognised good practice. However, we have gone over that at previous meetings where we received the annual report, and full council has not restructured our committees. So I would expect that to be maintained. If you look at pages 62 and 63, you can see the other areas for improvement. I think I hope, continue to work on our own skills, knowledge and experience. We have regularly had informal briefings that have also been attended by other members of the council who may from time to time sub or have a general interest in audit. But in general, I'm happy with the report and commend it to the committee, but obviously happy to take any questions or comments at this point, and I may well lean on the team of officers if you've got a particularly technical question. So Cooling.
Sorry, may I just ask clarification on pages 59 through, no, 59, 60, where the bullet points list the responsibilities. Are those God-given words, or should I say regulatory authority words, or they've been put together by officers within NBC? The reason I ask that, and I'm sure none of us shy away from the responsibility, but for several of them, you'd think that we are the ultimate arbiter or ultimate decision maker. And that is probably over-egging it, because I view, well, my role on this committee as trying to ask sensible questions as well as stupid questions to just try and test the robustness of officers' work, generally, which I have got the highest regard for in Maidstone. So my question is, are these bullets God-given words, God-given definitions of responsibility, or are they put together by officers? And if it's the latter, I would ask that they're reviewed at some point to just, in a sense, tone down the culpability or responsibility of this committee to a reasonable level of reasonable, incisive questioning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooling. I think I understand where you're coming from. So I'm going to try and explain this to the best of my understanding of the constitutional arrangements. The council's constitution, of which I happen to have a handy copy here, delegates a certain amount of responsibility to this committee around these activities. However, I am required to make this report to full council, and full council has responsibility for accepting the report. There are also a number of delegated functions that fall to officers, which are outlined in full in the constitution, which is available on the council's website. But I'm sure if you have any specific concerns about any particular one, we'd be happy to look at that. Just drop an email, because cross-referencing the constitution live this evening is possibly going to be a little arduous. But essentially, in terms of the constitutional responsibilities of the committee, that's how it sits. For matters of policy, the executive function sits with cabinet ultimately. So I'm personally comfortable from the chair that we're not being held to account for anything that we ought not to be. I hope that provides you with some assurance.
It certainly does, and thank you. I'll just give two illustrations of my concern that the words need to be tinkered with, because these 1.5 pages smack of all issues being tossed over the wall, if you follow me. So on page 60, working from the bottom, wanted the 4th bullet up to deal with complaints. We don't deal with complaints. We watch how the process, the procedure administered by the monitoring officer deals with them. And then for the final bullet, granted dispensations to members. We don't grant dispensations to members that I'm aware of, but we actually watch the process, the procedure.
So I would say, Councillor Cooling, that this is to do with the arcane nature of local government constitutions. The responsibility per the constitution falls to the committee, but the constitution delegates that to the relevant professional officers, as you mentioned, one such being the monitoring officer. The monitoring officer, or section 151 officer, if that would be appropriate, then provide the assurance, and that is how we square the circle between the bullet points, the constitution, and the professional duties of officers.
My final point then, please. Next time this is issued, if there could be in brackets after each bullet, how it's discharged. Is it here, or is it delegated, or is it what? These bullets, if they're boldly read, are very, very potentially onerous and may put off some people, some members signing up for this committee. So I would ask that the bullets are then explained the next time this is produced, or explained in terms of how they're discharged. Thank you.
I understand your point, but the place in which, in terms of the publications and the scheme of publications for the council, where that is explained, is in the Constitution, and the Constitution is available on the council's website. The process for changes to the Constitution is also quite convoluted and managed through the General Purposes and Democracy Committee. I might have that the wrong way around. Democracy and General Purposes Committee. So I can only give you assurance that there is a process. We are into the weeds somewhat of the, as I say, rather arcane constitutional arrangements of borough councils, but that is where that information is available to members of the council, prospective members of the committee, and members of the public. I hope that satisfies your comment. Were there any other questions or comments on our annual report? Excellent. So I move that the report be agreed, and that committee asks me to take the report to the meeting of full council, which is forthcoming, to demonstrate how the committee has discharged its duties. Is that agreed? Thank you, members. That takes us to item 15, which is the updated whistleblowing policy, which you will find on page 65. And I call upon Mark Goodwin, Audit Manager, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. For the purposes of this report, the committee is asked to approve the updated whistleblowing policy. A copy of the document can be found on page 68 of your agenda pack. The proposed version has not been changed significantly from the previous edition in terms of its overall purpose and aims, but has been updated to include a wider commitment from the management team as points of contact to raise concerns with, along with internal audit, set out on page 72. There's also a section on routes to raise other concerns at page 71 and the applicable policies in place there. It also signposts to external organisations at page 75. And there's a commitment for reporting to the Audit Standards and Governance Committee and for review and update of the policy. Certainly I've noted comments from the earlier item about making that an annual process. The policy presented to members tonight follows presentation to corporate leadership team. It's envisaged that the policy, once approved and operating, will be supported through promotion to raise awareness amongst staff and provide assurance that their concerns will be taken seriously. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions, Councillor Drabinski?
It's more of a comment than a question. It's just useful when you have documents like this to have maybe the changes highlighted from the original document, and so you can see whether things are being changed from before. But that's maybe for the future. I mean, otherwise you quite often you have to read the whole thing rather than you can just read the extra bits.
Thank you. Yes, I think it would be helpful just to save members debating issues that haven't changed. I've found myself in that sort of situation in other meetings, but I'd be grateful if that could be taken on board. Are there any other questions? Sorry, Dinesh, yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just go to the page number 76, the very last page, then I'll. Just very minor observation on the version number. I think this is version 1.3, but it looks like a repetitive. It's meant to be. I think the 1.2 is missing. It's meant to be 1.3, then 1.3. So previously it was reviewed in February. I think that's just minor observation. But my question is, on the website, the MBC's website is still the last amended one. It's 2016. So what happened to the after the 2016 version, 2021 and 2025 in February? Looks like they have been reviewed the two occasions. Thanks.
Thank you for the question. I think when I was doing my research back, I think there were some amendments made more recently. They tended to just be of an administrative nature, so where post titles had changed and things like that, rather than a sort of substantial amendment or change to the policy.
Okay. Still, I believe still I can't get my head around is so why the MBC's the website got the old version rather than the amended one? That's the bit I can't get understand on that.
Sorry, could you repeat the question, please? Sorry.
But on the MBC's website, the borough website, you got the whistleblowing policy. It's the last one, which was very first one that was issued in 2016. But thereafter, we had a 2 revision. So my question is, why the MBC's website got the very original version, not the amended one?
I'm not too sure about that. Why that might have happened. If that's a publication error with their website potentially.
All right, thanks. So now my another observation on the page number 71, where you get this diagram, the link for the first 2, safeguarding and then health and safety, they do work, that link. However, the bullying and harassment and the grievance and the resolution policy, the link, they're invalid. So they might just say comment would be when that goes to the publication, that link, hyperlink got to be corrected. Thank you.
I take it that will just be taken up with the IT department for updating the link, yes?
Certainly before the policy gets published proper, I'll do a proper recheck of the links. They were correct at the time. Sometimes things can change behind the background which interfere with these things.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gooch.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if I'm rehashing Councillor Khadka's question from the beginning of the meeting about the work plan, but the process for instances of whistleblowing is that if it's, I'm trying to summarise what it says here, but if it's upheld or something's done about it, the head of internal audit partnership maintains a record of concerns and will report as necessary to Audit, Governance and Standards Committee. I assume we haven't received anything on this because there haven't been any instances of whistleblowing since we've been members of the committee, and that's why there's nothing on the work plan. But would it, I don't know whether it follows up on the original concern that it is a standing item on the work plan, even if, like the complaints policy, it often says there have been no instances of whistleblowing, or there have been X instances where it's been raised but nothing's become of it. In the same way that we received the complaints, is that something that would be within our remit as the audit committee, or does that overstep our reach? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. I think in the policy, what I've put in there is a stronger commitment to come to this committee with instances of whistleblowing referrals. There aren't that many at Maidstone. However, I think you're correct, even where there's a nil return, it's appropriate for the committee to be made aware of that. So yeah, I'll take the point there.
Thank you, Councillor Cooch. Can I ask from the chair then that is it possible to amend the complaints report so that it encompasses complaints and whistleblowing rather than receiving multiple reports, given that, as you say, they are in both cases relatively rare, and that would seem to be a reasonable step. Would that satisfy the committee? I think that would give us the nil return assurance that I think we're looking for. Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Kaka.
Sorry, Chair, apologies. That will be the last question, by the way. Just consider the page number 73. When you said the aim to reach the conclusion within a reasonable time scale, I'm really struggling to, having that open end and the reasonable. Like I think in a complaint we said the 24 hours. I believe that's some sort of the time limit got to be mentioned.
Certainly, the report sets out some initial timeframes and responses where a concern is raised to acknowledge that. I would have to say, Councillor, that the nature of an investigation can be quite complex to reach and arrive at a conclusion. So I wouldn't want a policy and the council's policy to be specific in terms of a matter being resolved within a number of days.
Mr. Dobbs. Thanks, Chairman. Just to echo other comments, and I know I referred to this earlier, the policy earlier, it would be useful to kind of get under the skin of the numbers. I mean, you've said there's very few cases. There's some comfort we can take from that, but it's possible, playing devil's advocate, that's because the awareness isn't there or people don't have confidence in the process. So I think, when this comes back again, just some wider commentary which reflects on that would be useful, just so we understand how it sits within the organisation. We can look at the numbers and we can feel assured that, when we've got those low numbers of protected disclosures, it is indicative of what I'm sure is the case of good governance in the council.
That's a fair point. The policy, I believe, does need a little bit of promotion at this stage, and it may well be as a result of promotion and wider awareness that might trigger a greater number of concerns. It may well be that those concerns just aren't out there, and that's the case. Sometimes things do come across the audit desk, and it's very much a question of initially sort of like unpicking it. Hopefully one of the aims of this policy is to sort of like signpost where a member of staff may have concern. However, that is better addressed through a HR route. So, I've tried to do that here as well. Certainly we've had experiences, not at this site, but across other councils that I've worked for, where we'll get a complaint which, requires that initial level of review, where there will be instances which need to be looked at through the whistleblowing route, but others which fall more towards a grievance route. So it can be quite complex in nature, but I certainly take the sentiment of returning to the committee with some sort of further information on whistleblowing concerns.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments at this stage? So this is before us for decision. So I'll move from the chair that we approve the updated whistleblowing policy. Can I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Trubinsky. Is that agreed? Thank you, members. Takes us to our final item this evening, which is item 17, page 112 on your papers. The Budget Strategy and Risk Assessment Update. I call upon Mark Green, Director of Finance and Resources, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. This is the usual report in which I summarise what I see as the risks facing the Council from a financial and budget point of view. And the things that I'd like to draw out are, first of all, so far as the Council's current financial performance is concerned, we're now nearly halfway through the year. We've reported on Q1's financial performance, which was reasonably satisfactory in that we were only just short of achieving budget for the first quarter. So that is a good indication that we'll be able to keep within budget for the year as a whole. On the capital programme, we've already talked about this a bit. There are risks around the capital programme about delivery, availability of finance, which are mentioned in here. Looking further ahead, and this was addressed in the previous version of this report, first of all, we don't know exactly what the consequences of the government's reform of local authority funding will be for this council, although the government has set out the mechanisms that they'll be using to set funding for next year. The actual figures haven't been published yet. They will be published at the end of November or beginning of December. So we are waiting to see exactly what the implications of funding reform will be. But the thought is generally they're not that positive for district councils, given that the whole objective of the funding reform was to direct funding towards areas that were seen as being in greatest need. And the final thing that is coming up is local government reorganisation. And as the report says, I think there's two aspects to this from a risk point of view. First of all, the disruption that it could potentially cause before it's actually implemented by diverting resources from other things. We're mitigating that as much as possible by putting the message out to staff to concentrate on the day job and not be distracted by LGR, but that there is a risk. And the bigger risk, which isn't specifically addressed here, is what the new landscape of local government looks like and whether the new arrangements will be financially sustainable. We know that both Medway Council and Kent County Council have big budget gaps, and if you put all the 14 local authorities in Kent together, it doesn't solve that problem, and the savings that would be achievable from reducing the number of authorities are in no way enough to close those budget gaps that exist in the upper tier. So there's certainly a risk around financial sustainability of local government going forward. And as Section 151 officer, I will draw members' attention to that, in particular when the submission to government goes in November, given that that's the point at which the council will be putting forward its proposals for local government reorganisation. But in the end, the decisions aren't for the council. The decisions will be made by central government. So that's just a summary of the things that are mentioned in the report. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Titchener.
One quick question. I've heard a lot of people in KCC have no interest in unitary authorities and they want to maintain KCC. Is Mason talking to KCC to find out what they're doing? I presume the government can stop KCC doing what they want to do, but I don't know. Are you talking to them? Because it seems a complete mess to me.
Yeah, it's been fairly well advertised in the local media that there are different proposals coming forward from the authorities around Kent. As you say, Kent County Council wants to have a a single unitary model. This council is likely to put forward a proposal for 3 unitaries, of which we would be part of a West Kent unitary. Now, that means that come November, there will be likely to be a number of different proposals going into central government. And in the end, as I said, it will be up to central government what model they implement. Kent County Council can put forward their proposals, but in the end, it's not their decision as to what the new structure looks like.
Just to add to that, there have been meetings between all of the leaders of authorities across Kent throughout the process. I think it's fair to say, because as a top tier authority, Kent County Council has had an election and a change of administration that has thrown a curveball to a certain extent. But my own view on, in terms of what members have been updated with to date, is that the early discussions were constructive. But as Mr. Green says, ultimately, district and borough councils are very small fish in this particular issue. And whilst we will make a contribution in terms of what we think the future governance of Kent should look like, it very much sits with the relevant government department, which changes its name a lot. Culture, media, sport, and something else I've forgotten, I think. But yeah, that's where it sits. Are there any other questions or comments on the report? Councillor Cooling.
Thank you. Presumably, the only safe assumption is that local government structure will not change. And presumably, most of the planning of the borough should be on that assumption, with contingency planning, or if a variable number of unitaries from 1 to 4 come through. So we cannot, presumably, we're not assuming 100% that the borough will disappear, and therefore some things are less relevant than they otherwise would be. Haven't we got to focus on the borough persisting? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooling. I think the way that I would answer that is not to say that we should assume that the borough will continue in existence, because the government has made a clear statement that they are seeking to reorganise local government. What I think we can say is that the services that we're responsible for delivering will have to continue being delivered, and that will include delivering a planning service, waste collection, all the things that we do. So whatever entity delivers those in the future, we don't know, but those services will have to continue being delivered. And certainly from the viewpoint of members and management here at Maidstone, we're very committed to making sure that we hand over those services to a new authority in as good in as strong a state as we possibly can.
I may follow on. I totally agree. There aren't that many doing jobs, if any, that will disappear. But anyway, and I know this current government never changes its mind, so let's move on from that. But I note that at our next meeting there will be a Treasury Management update. So on page 115, paragraph 2.8, you note the costs of PWLB loans is now about 6%. Will we have, as part of that update in November, an opinion on when this borough is likely to need a substantial injection of a loan? I mean, you had a major win with the 80 million, 3% or whatever. Be an idea if we had a hint what you're thinking in terms of funding the still very large capital program. 6% is troubling. Which way that is likely to go is anyone's bet. But I assume we're going to need very substantial loan in the not too distant future. What is the opinion on timing that you will get from link if they're still in play, etc. So will we have an update?
Thank you, Councillor Cooting. Certainly, it won't be in November because the report in November is backward looking. It looks at the first half of the current financial year, but the point at which you will see our plans for future borrowing is in February. Sorry, the report comes to this committee in January when we present the Treasury Management Strategy for next year, and that will include our estimates of what borrowing is required and what the implications of that are for the council's finances. And it all links to the budget setting process, because as you would expect, the cost of finance feeds through into the revenue budget that then has to be agreed by council in February.
An observation in your paragraph 2.14. I thought that was very, very useful. I think I've got the right paragraph. There's only been a small handful of referenda. Surprise, surprise, the local voters didn't want to vote for a greater percentage. So presumably that is just nowhere in our conceptualization of going above, whether it's 3%, 5%, or what it's going to be. That is an important paragraph. You shouldn't assume a referendum will cure all ills. All right?
Yes, I think that's correct. And I mean, it would be a decision for council to seek a referendum. I'm not aware of anything in the wider conversation that would indicate that that's a likely course of action at this point. Were there any other questions or comments on this item?
On
Please do.
matrix on page 120, given the observation earlier on that we are 95% plus or minus locally funded, when I look at risk H, which is in the top right black uncomfortable corner, is that this is not a precise exercise, I fully understand that, but should that be downrated considerably in terms of its impact relative to what's J, capital program can't be funded, etc. Its relative importance seems to be diminished because you are so successful in funding locally the total need. So I would contend that H should be downrated considerably impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooling. You've made a very good point, and it links back to your previous one about the referendum limit, because the government sets the rules about how much we can raise locally, and the rules say that we are dependent on what we raise locally, largely speaking, but it's constrained by, for example, the referendum limit. So yes, we collect a lot of money through council tax, but we can only put up council tax by, this year it was 3%. Similarly with business rates, although we get a slice of business rates that are collected locally, the actual proportion of the business rates that we retain isn't up to us, it's up to central government. So we are self-sufficient in a sense, but we have to operate within the regime that is set by central government. So that's really what that risk is pointing out, adverse impact from changes in local government funding.
May raise one more on the same matrix. O is litigation costs exceed budgeted provisions. This is where our borough has declared it's got 4.5-year housing supply, and therefore the probability of more appeals going to the planning inspectorate, to which I would hope the borough would respond very robustly. I see the O on the matrix, the impact is okay, fairly high, but its likelihood is only 2. So detailing it, I would have thought, given the status of our housing supply, given how long it's going to take to review the local plan, that the litigation costs, the likelihood is going to go shooting up, especially not just for houses, shall we say, but also if the Gypsy and Traveller DPD, which is coming out as Reg 18C soon, if that goes to 19 and it hasn't got very, very robust policies, or maybe if it has got very robust policies, there are going to be a lot of appeals on that front as well. So I just leave the observation that O, whereas I wanted H to come down considerably, I think O, the likelihood is likely to shoot up over the next year or so. An observation.
Thank you. You're absolutely right, again, to point out or draw members' attention to the risk, Councillor Cooling. And what I should say, and what I plan on the Chair's suggestion to do in the next report, is to distinguish between a risk before and after mitigation. And what you're seeing here is the risk after mitigation. There is a risk of litigation costs, but that is mitigated because we do advise planning committee members if there's an application that they don't like, but which planning officers think will succeed on appeal, the committee will be advised, you may not like it, but if you reject the application, the chances are that we'll lose on appeal and we will face all of those costs. So we can mitigate that to an extent by advising planning committee members about the consequences, but you're absolutely right. There's an increasing risk of planning applications coming forward that will be contentious, and hence this is a risk.
I'd like to bring in Councillor Drabinski, if I may. I know that he sits on planning committee as well, and he has asked to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not on the planning committee now, but I have been up to May and in previous years and things. And one thing I would say is that at the moment, I'm aware of a number of projects that are going, but most of them in the local plan. And whilst they're not coming into fruition immediately, the land agents and the developers are looking at getting planning permission, and it will be very difficult in a lot of those cases for the planning committee to actually say they don't want them anyway, regardless of the fact that they're in the local plan already, and you talk about small developments, 20, 25 houses in rural locations, and you talk about the bigger ones that are there. So I hear what you say, and yes, you're right. If you get stuff that comes forward which is outside of the local plan, then that could be an issue. But again, as Mark was saying, if the likelihood is that the planning inspector will agree to it, then the planning committee are advised of that, and they have to take that into account in their deliberations.
Thank you, Councillor Drabinski. I'd just add, by way of assurance, that there is mandatory training for councillors that do sit on planning committee, and also maybe sitting as substitutes on planning committee, where the legal obligations are covered extensively. So I would just reiterate that every reasonable effort is made to make sure that councillors don't make decisions that are likely to lead to challenge in the courts under the existing local plan and national planning framework. But Councillor Cooling, if you'd like to come back.
Well, that is a very slippery slope, and my parish is right on the edge of Tunbridge and Walling, and I've been to various planning committees in Tunbridge and Walling, and I've just been to a hearing, and the same is happening here by the sound of it, but we're getting frightened of gunfire from appeal costs. And if Maidstone does not continue or establish a reputation for being strong on defending its views, then will be viewed as a soft touch. And I'm not talking about small sites. Windfalls, there are lots of windfalls in the local plan, as you know. But the big sites, our borough has got to stand up and be counted. And that may actually mean going and defending an appeal. And unless the borough makes big procedural errors at the hearing, at the planning inspectorate's examination, unless it makes procedural errors, the chances of big costs are very, very, very limited. And therefore, again, it's only an observation, but and maybe I should come along to the planning committee and ask some questions if they're allowed at the planning committee. But we've got to stay tough because the environment is going to get tougher on big developments. Forget the small ones, we need them. The big ones need to have a rebuttal from this borough that they're out with the local plan. And therefore, and Ashford has recently, at a planning committee, which I listened into, they're on 4.6 years, 4.5 years. They took this tough view. It's close, I'm paraphrasing, it's close enough to 5. And by the way, the current economic circumstances in this country, particularly for construction, do not encourage building. It's going to get better, we've got to believe. So if we start weakening our position on defending our views on where major development should go, it's a very slippery path, is my view.
Thank you for your view, Councillor Cooling. I'm going to draw a line under it there because it's rather outside of the substance of the report. The Planning Committee, as a quasi-judicial committee, has quite strict rules. You are allowed to ask questions at planning, but they are restricted to you being able to speak 3 minutes on the specific item that is being presented to the Planning Committee, and I can assure you that the chair is quite robust on that point. But you're always welcome to go to Planning Committee and observe, I'm sure. Were there any other questions or comments on this item? In which case, I declare the meeting closed. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, I do have to note it, and I told you I'm having a terrible day today. Yes, sorry, apologies. We are asked to note the risk assessment of the budget strategy as provided at Appendix A. Is the committee happy to do so? Thank you very much. Now I will declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much for your time.